Hi everyone, Olivia Reiner here at Lambeau Field, joined by none other than the illustrious, very accomplished, very intelligent Jim Ozarski.
Thank you.
Just trying to pump you up before our big live stream here today, Jim. Guys, we're here just a couple days away from Thursday night football right here at Lambeau Field, and hopefully you can't hear too much noise in the background, but there are lots of crews setting up their stages and cameras and whatnot, so you may see some people walking behind us and dragging along who knows what to their sets. So hopefully you'll get a little bit of a taste of what's going on. So as always, we are live on Facebook, on Periscope, on YouTube. So hello, wherever you're watching. Thank you for joining us. I will be taking a look at our Facebook comments and interacting with some of you guys in the chat, taking your questions. We love to hear from you. So we don't have the injury report yet, Jim.
Right.
So we're waiting on that. Yesterday, they put out an estimation of if the Packers had practiced, this is what the injury report and the participation would have been like. And most notably, Jimmy Graham back on the injury report. This time, not just with his groin injury, but also with a quad injury.
Yeah, just another leg injury for a guy who, coming off a knee issue last year and questionable what his legs had left to begin with. Although he thought, coming in he'd be able to still prove he can run and jump and do all the things that he was signed to do. So we'll see, if he'll be good to go Thursday night on a short week. There's a part of me, Olivia, that thinks the guy hasn't really been much of a factor yet, even when he was healthy the first couple weeks. So why push the envelope as you start to stack soft tissue injuries on top of one another? Like, that's just not going to get better playing football. So why not give him Thursday so he gets a full 2 weeks before Dallas when you're going to be playing a team that, arguably is, an NFC favorite right now, to have home field, and that's a game that could really matter going forward. So, we'll see. Matt LaFleur's not practicing these guys because he wants them to get healthy, so we'll see how that goes in the next couple of days for them. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what his statuses are today after, again, as you said, they're not practicing, but what the estimation would be if they did practice. Both Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers have said this week that Rodgers, especially even today, talked about needing to get Jimmy Graham the ball more. So they keep making it seem like he's a big part of their offense, and meanwhile, we just haven't seen that.
No. I mean, Chicago worked, and maybe that's what they think it could be, should be. But if he somehow got injured early in that Minnesota game, which limited his usage or him even getting some separation, we've already now seen 2 weeks of him being limited. So if the expectation is what we saw in Chicago, that's fine. That can be effective. But if he's hurt, I don't see how that works then. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, hey, look, I'm going to give him all the credit in the world for playing through it the last 2 weeks. But again, there are no catches. There are no touchdowns. There's no difference making. So we saw it in Chicago. Why not give him that opportunity to get back to that?
Dale wants to know, is there any chance that the Packers would consider moving on from Jimmy Graham? Do you think Brian Gutekunst would be able to swallow his pride after spending all this money to get Jimmy Graham and just let him go like this?
No. If that was going to happen, it was going to happen, before March when they paid him a $5 million roster bonus. And if it happens, it'll be next offseason when he's due another year and another $10 million. So it is what it is right now. And that's why I think if they want him to be a big part of the offense, a la Chicago, give him that opportunity. And that would be, to me, not playing him Thursday, giving him 2 full weeks to get ready and get right with those soft tissue injuries going into Dallas and an artificial surface.
All right, but this week, got the Eagles. So as we know, if you've taken a look at the injury report, if you've been following along to any of the conversations that we've been having, that the Packers have been having in the locker room, you know that the Eagles are a little banged up. Marcus wants to know, do you think Eagles wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey plays, or do you think Doug Peterson said today on the conference call that he was hopeful that he would play? Jeffrey apparently said to reporters in Philadelphia that he wasn't as forthcoming about whether or not he was going to play. Who do you think is telling the most truth?
Yeah, I think they're so depleted. I think Arcega-Whiteside would not have practiced for the Eagles yesterday with a heel issue, and he's one of the few healthy guys they have playing receiver. So put it this way, I don't know. I think if Jeffrey can go, he's going to go. It's just a matter. I think Doug Peterson is a good enough offensive coach that a guy like Jeffrey might be used situationally. They wouldn't run him out there maybe between the 20s or not on third down. He's a big body who usually is pretty reliable with his hands. Last year's divisional round against the Saints notwithstanding. So, I don't know. It's so hard to guess on these short weeks. It's even harder for the team that's got to go on the road. So I think if the head coach feels, hey, he might, I'd lean with the head coach more than the player at this point. Because I think players are just sort of trained to not say much.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, there's Jim's 2 cents there.
Yeah.
But it's
hard to say.
Hard to say.
Don't start him in fantasy, I guess, if that's your question. If that's what's part of the question.
But there's always an underlying fantasy inquiry.
Maybe hold off for your
questions.
guys on Sunday.
So speaking of maybe underlying inquiries for fantasy-related purposes, a lot of people in here talking about Marquez Valdes-Scantling and him being the future of the Packers wide receiving core. Andrew says that the Packers don't need to go out and find another wide receiver. You got a little friend here, Jim.
Yeah.
The Packers don't need to go out and hunt down wide receiving talent. I think that's been some chatter online, and that the Packers are depleted at receiver. They are not necessarily depleted, but they don't have the top tier talent that maybe some say they might need. What do you see in Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and how much more does he need to develop and grow into a role where he's not just a deep threat down the field?
Right. Well, I mean, I can roll with the argument that the Packers don't have the talent, if you will, on paper at receiver. I mean, look, with the trading of Trevor Davis, Devontae Adams was a second-round pick, is obviously now a clear number one. Marquez Valdes-Scantling was a fifth-round pick last year. And then it's a bunch of undrafted receivers. And while they're all try-hard, work-hard guys who can make catches, they've like Jamal Allison, we kind of know what Allison can do and can be. The Eagles have Deshaun Jackson, and Alshon Jeffrey was a high pick of the Bears. Nelson Aguilar was a second-round pick. Arcega-Whiteside's a second-round pick. I mean, like, on paper, guys like that, teams that have those guys, that's why they're high draft picks and not undrafted. So there's something to be said for that. Now, Valdes-Scantling, he's a developmental guy. That's what a fifth-round pick is. All the physical tools. You can see it. There were the couple 100-yard games last year. Last week, 6 catches, 99 yards. I think this offense is meant – so he has 6 for 99. I could easily see Jamal Allison having 5 for 75 and a score Thursday night. And Valdes-Scantling has 4 catches for 45 yards. You know what I mean? Like, I think this offense is meant to accentuate their positives, which doesn't necessarily mean a whole bunch of targets. I think the bigger issue is getting Devontae Adams out of all of those cloud coverages, out of all those double teams where he's becoming a non-factor, because that's your difference maker. And I maybe it goes hand in hand, Olivia. Maybe Valdes-Scantling has to have 3 straight games of 701 or 699 and to pull some of that away. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so I can get where the thought is they need another playmaker, but I think this offense is meant to be where you don't need to have those guys necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Rodgers said after the game on Sunday that he thought Valdes-Scantling made some improvements on games past. So the trend is going up for sure. We'll see how he does.
He's definitely developing.
Thursday.
I mean, he's better than he was last year. He'll probably be better in 2 years than he is right now. It's just that's what happens when you have 5th-round picks. It takes Adam was a 2nd-round pick, and it took him a few years too.
So let's pivot to defense for a little bit. Packers have obviously had a lot of success in affecting the quarterback and the pass defense, but the run defense has been taking a little bit of time to get going. They were able to clamp down on big plays, which was an issue against the Vikings. But this past week, it was more, again, just focused sort of on being able to stop the run more effectively. Something I got a DM from Chris, who was asking about Tyler Lancaster. He started in place of Montravius Adams, who was injured and who is still on the injury report. We'll see where he ends up today once we get the injury report.
And feels like he's out again.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that, he would have been did not practice Monday.
Sure. So we'll see what happens today. But Lancaster has implications in the Packers' run defense. I mean, he's a bigger guy. What did you see from him? Who is he? I think Chris's main question was, who is this guy and where did he come from? Because he kind of came out of, I guess, if you're not super following everything that the Packers are doing super consistently, maybe he's one of the guys that would fly under the radar, especially since he was an undrafted free agent on the practice squad last season.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's a guy, he's a depth guy, a guy who had to make the team coming out of camp last year. And by the end of last season, due to some injuries to Daniels and Clark and Montravius Adams wasn't as relied upon a year ago, in Mike Pettine's scheme, Tyler Lancaster proved he belonged in the NFL last year. Actually, you probably would have noticed him, I guess, a little more early in the game Sunday with some run stops. To Denver's credit, Philip Lindsay's credit, they ran the ball pretty effectively, I think, as the game wore on. So, Tyler Lancaster's kind of your glue depth guy. Like, he's not going to be Dean Lowry, who's signed a $20 million extension. He's not going to be Kenny Clark, who's maybe signing a $100 million extension in the near future. He's there to help and run defense. I think in his world, if you see him making tackles along the line of scrimmage, which means you probably don't notice him, I'm sure Tyler's okay with that. What he doesn't want you to see, or the Packers don't want you to see, is the running back running by him and the back of number 95's jersey. So he's definitely a glue guy. You're going to see more in those sort of base run dominant fronts, which I don't know how much we'll see of that against Philly, as their run game isn't quite where they want it to be just yet.
So Ryan Wood and I were speaking about this recently. Are the Packers missing Mike Daniels right about now in their run defense? What was his significance in their run defense?
Maybe like a couple years ago, Mike Daniels, they'd be missing him. I think at this juncture, they're not missing anything. I mean, I think if he was still here, you would see him rushing the passer. And they clearly felt Dean Lowry was ready for that role. And obviously Zadarius Smith drops down, and Rashawn Gary to a degree. So I think Mike Daniels, I mean, maybe he would have been playing more on first and second down, but that wasn't his forte to begin with. I don't think so. I think if anything, if you're going to look in the recent past, it would have been like a Muhammad Wilkerson type, that big guy, anchor guy. So no, look, Mike Pettine basically had a great line where he said, you fly to Miami faster than you walk there, and he still feels that you get beat through the air, and you just try to eventually get a team to throw. And that's just how the run game is. That's how they approach run defense here in Green Bay now. They're gonna give up yards. They're gonna give up long drives, but at some point, they know you're gonna have to throw it, and that's when they think they'll beat you.
So Todd wants to know, why do you think Aaron Rodgers, he says, made so many off-cue passes last week, saying a lot of them ended up in the ground or into the sidelines. Aaron was asked about this, I want to say it was even after the game on Sunday, but he was also asked about it today. Is there a trade-off to throwing balls away, but then there's also the point, well, hey, you're not turning it over, or the quarterback's not getting hit even. Right. What do you take away from that?
There's all of those things. So one example he brought up today, which was he's running out, Bradley Chubb is in his face, he has a decision to make. Do I just throw the ball away, or do I throw it to Mercedes Lewis, who has a guy right on him? Okay, so what happens there? If he catches it, it's a no gain, it's maybe a loss, maybe it's a fumble, maybe the ball pops up and it's intercepted. He's like, or I could just dirt it. and you go to the next play. So those, same thing with throwaways. If there's a couple reads that's not there, Aaron Rodgers is not going to throw an interception. So that's just what it is. Now, I think what's worth wondering about is the miss to, say, Geronimo Allison over the middle, where if that's a ball on rhythm where it should be, it's a catch and run, it's a huge gain. Not the deep touchdown, would-be touchdown to Robert Tonyan. I think that was more on the tight end slowing down. But earlier in the game, Olivia, there was an outlet to Tonyan on the Broncos sideline, went airmailed.
Yeah, that was strange.
Those, I think, are just misses from the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can name 2 out of the entire game. Maybe 5 years ago, Aaron Rodgers doesn't miss any. Maybe. And maybe that's just being 36 years old now. I don't know. But I think there's a combination of all those things that lead to certain throwaways, throws in the dirt. I mean, I think it's all those things, and it's just the matter of when they occur and how often.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. Sorry, I am also trying to get through some of our comments here. Todd says that the Packers are not missing any of the guys that they've released, and I would agree with that.
Yeah,
I think they've made upgrades.
Yeah, I think usually we'll hear this next week, especially if the passing game doesn't click Thursday night going into Dallas. What about Randall Cobb? But again, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that would have been. I mean, if he would have come back here for $5 million, do we know anything about Marquez Valdes-Scantling at this point? I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said for that because he's kind of found a role in Dallas. But I don't know if he'd make this markedly better at this point.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to just sort of generalize a couple questions I've seen in the comments, kind of put some things together for you guys so we can knock out a bunch of things.
Yeah.
So, Aaron Rodgers in his career right now, I think there are people who are pleased with the way that Brian Gutekunst has built, especially the defense this offseason, especially exploring free agency and going that route to building the roster. We've got Dale, or excuse me, is this Dale? Sorry, we're moving quick. Oh, sorry, Rico, pointing out that had Brian Gutekunst been doing this earlier in Aaron Rodgers' career, would Aaron Rodgers have I guess, more youth in him and a better ability to have another MVP season? Do you buy into that? Can they dwell on that?
Yeah.
Or is that too far gone?
It'll be one of the greatest what-ifs, I think. I think it's a what-if that Packers fans have for Favre, that they only went to 2 Super Bowls, won 1. I think Rodgers at this point is – look, I think there definitely are questions to be asked about the end of Ted Thompson's tenure, for sure. And I know fans were a little upset with Don Capers not getting fired earlier than he was, but you can also look back at what was he operating with, right? So I think that's always a natural thing when you have a transcendent talent that maybe doesn't win as much as the fan base would have liked. And frankly, like the 15-1 year, where they are so dominant and then lose in the divisional round at home and just get waxed, right? Where that happened. Like, you had a good team that just didn't do anything. There were however many NFC title game appearances that they couldn't get out of. So, the onside kick, I mean, maybe it's different if Brandon Bostic does his job. I don't know. You know what I mean? I think that's just the hard part about not fulfilling expectations.
Sure. And sports, things happen.
Right. And it's really hard to say. I mean, if Ted Thompson moves on earlier, I don't know if Brian Gutekunst is the GM, because it might have been someone else. And maybe Goody somewhere else. Or maybe those last few years needed to have happened for Brian Gutekunst to realize a pivot needed to be made. So it is. That is one of the great Barstool discussions. It's what makes sports fun, but also frustrating.
That is a good point, Jim.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good stuff. I'll take one more question. We have Andrew asking about Rashawn Gary and his health status heading into Thursday. So he left the game early on Sunday with cramps. He returned, and he obviously had that sack. Yep. He's on the injury report yesterday as being limited estimation, again, regarding, I believe, a calf injury.
Yeah. I think that's probably
related to the cramps.
Yeah, to me, and maybe they called it cramps and then realized, maybe there's a little little tug in there. We'll see. I mean, we saw him in the locker room today. He looked fine, for whatever that's worth. Sometimes guys who are really nursing some soft tissue stuff we don't see just because they're trying to get that worked out. But go figure. We got a guy asking about Rashawn Gary playing more and what's his health as opposed to where is he, right? It's important. I mean, Kyler Fackrell had a shoulder last week that limited him quite a bit. He played. I mean, there's only 4 outside linebackers. The Smiths are playing, 89, 90% of the time.
The snaps went down, a little
bit. They did because Gary played more.
Yeah.
So I think on a short week, I would imagine the plan is for Rashawn Gary to play a little more again or about the same to, again, save the legs of those 2 other guys.
All right, guys, before we get blown away, I think we're going to cut it short here. We will be live on Thursday, as always. We'll see about tomorrow. Tomorrow we've got coordinators speaking.
Right.
So
no practice, no locker availability.
No locker room, no LaFleur. So if there's anything newsworthy that warrants a discussion with you, I'll let you guys know. But if not, expect to hear from us on Thursday before the game and after the game, as always. Before the game with Pete Doherty, after the game with Ryan Wood. Should be a great time. Hopefully it won't be nearly as windy as this is right now because I'm not enjoying the hair in my face one bit. Guys, thank you very much